There are moments in history when a single life becomes the spark that ignites an inferno. When one soul's light burns so bright that its extinguishing awakens something ancient and terrible. This is the story of how the Galaxy Council learned that humanity had been waiting, watching, and preparing for the day someone made the fatal mistake of harming one of their own. Sienna Blackwood never imagined her brilliance would be her death sentence. At 22 years old, she stood as the youngest human to ever achieve the rank of Stellar Diplomat Third Class at the Nexus Academy on orbital platform Artemis. Her copper skin glowed under the artificial lights of the station, and her dark eyes sparkled with an intelligence that made even the most ancient species pause in consideration. While other human students struggled to pass basic xenobiology courses, Sienna had mastered the linguistic patterns of 43 different alien languages and could negotiate trade agreements that left seasoned council members speechless. The other students both admired and envied her. There was Ricketh, a four-armed crane whose people had been spacefaring for 10,000 years, yet he often sought Sienna's advice on complex mathematical problems. Then there was Olynthiya, a gaseous being from the nebula reaches who communicated through color changes, and even she had learned to appreciate the way Sienna could find common ground between the most hostile of species. But not everyone celebrated her success. In the shadowed chambers where the Galaxy Council's true power resided, whispers had begun. Whispers about the human girl who dared to suggest that the old ways of conquest and submission were outdated. Whispers about her proposal for a new framework of galactic cooperation that would distribute resources based on need rather than military strength. On the morning everything changed, Sienna was preparing for her final examination. The test required students to propose a solution to the Varenthi crisis, a centuries-old conflict between the insectoid Varenthi collective and the aquatic tidecallers of Oceara Prime. Both species claimed ownership of a moon that contained rare minerals essential to their survival. Previous solutions had all involved military intervention or forced relocation of one species. Sienna entered the examination hall, her footsteps echoing against the crystalline floors. The room was circular, with holographic displays floating in the air showing real-time data from across the galaxy. Seated in a semicircle were the examiners, representing various council species. At the center sat High Examiner Corvith, a being that resembled a mantis made of living obsidian, whose species had ruled the council for 3 millennia. The human approached the center platform, her tablet clutched in her hands. She took a deep breath and began her presentation. Instead of proposing division or conquest, Sienna suggested something radical. She proposed that both species abandon their claims of ownership entirely and instead establish the Moon as the first jointly governed free zone in galactic history. The Varenthi could use their incredible engineering abilities to build mining facilities, while the Tidecallers could use their natural ability to process and purify the minerals through their unique biology. The profits would be split equally, and both species would have representatives in a shared governing body. The room fell silent. Ricketh, watching from the student gallery, felt his 4 hearts beat faster with pride. Olynthiya shifted through a rainbow of colors expressing amazement. But High Examiner Corvitha's expression remained unreadable behind his dark exoskeleton. After a long pause, Corvith spoke, his voice like stones grinding together. "Miss Blackwood, your solution demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of galactic order. The strong rule. The weak serve. This has been the way for millions of years. To suggest otherwise is to invite chaos." Sienna stood straighter, meeting his gaze without flinching. "With respect, High Examiner, that order has also produced millions of years of war, suffering, and waste. My species may be new to the stars, but we learned something during our time confined to one planet. We learned that cooperation produces more prosperity than domination. We learned that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker." A ripple of shock went through the chamber. No student had ever contradicted a High Examiner so directly. Corvitha's mandibles clicked together in what might have been anger or amusement. "How bold," he said softly. "Tell me, Miss Blackwood, do you truly believe your young species understands the galaxy better than those of us who have guided it for eons?" I believe every species has something valuable to teach, Sienna replied. And I believe that refusing to learn from others, regardless of their age or power, is the greatest form of ignorance. The examination ended shortly after. Sienna returned to her quarters, unsure whether she had passed or failed, but certain she had spoken her truth. She spent the evening sending messages to her family on Earth, telling them about her day, sharing her hopes for the future. What Sienna did not know was that in a sealed chamber deep within the station, 5 council members were holding an emergency meeting. Corvith stood before them, his shadow stretching across the walls. The human has become a symbol, he said. Other young species are beginning to question our authority. If we allow this to continue, the order we have maintained will crumble. Counselor Thexus, a reptilian creature with scales that shimmered like oil, nodded slowly. Then we must act. But carefully. Humans are emotional creatures. If we simply eliminate her, they will demand investigations. An accident, suggested Counselor Breenex, whose species resembled walking crystals. Space is dangerous. Students die in training exercises. It would be tragic but not suspicious. Corvitha's mandibles clicked in agreement. Send her on the expedition to the Crimson Nebula. The magnetic storms there are unpredictable. A shuttle malfunction would surprise no one. 2 days later, Sienna received a notification that made her smile. She had been selected for a prestigious research trip to study the unique properties of the Crimson Nebula. It was an honor rarely given to students, let alone humans. She packed her belongings with excitement, recording one final message to her parents about this incredible opportunity. As she boarded the small research shuttle designated Transport Echo 9, Sienna waved to Ricketh and Olynthyia, who had come to see her off. The shuttle's engines hummed to life, and soon the station was shrinking behind her, a glittering jewel against the darkness of space. Sienna settled into her seat, reviewing the research parameters for her trip. She did not notice the subtle fluctuation in the shuttle's navigation systems. She did not see the small device hidden in the power coupling, counting down to activation. She was too busy dreaming about the discoveries she would make, the bridges she would build between species, the future she would help create. The shuttle entered the Crimson Nebula's outer edge, and Sienna gasped at the beauty of it. Crimson and gold clouds of cosmic dust swirled in patterns that seemed almost alive. She reached for her camera to capture the moment. That was when the device activated. The shuttle's systems failed simultaneously. The engines died. Life support flickered. The navigation computer went dark. Sienna had only seconds to understand what was happening before the magnetic storms of the nebula began tearing the shuttle apart. Her last thought was not of fear, but of sadness. She had wanted so badly to prove that different species could work together, that peace was possible, that the future could be brighter than the past. In those final moments, as the shuttle's hull began to breach, Sienna Blackwood transmitted one last message. It was not a cry for help. It was not an accusation. It was simply her research data, everything she had learned about bringing species together, sent on all frequencies in hope that someone, somewhere, would continue her work. The shuttle exploded in a flash of light that was swallowed instantly by the crimson clouds. To the council members watching from their secret chamber, it was just another spark fading into darkness. They had no idea they had just lit a fuse that would burn all the way to Earth and awaken something they should have feared. The message arrived at Earth Stellar Command 3 hours after Sienna Blackwood's shuttle disintegrated in the Crimson Nebula. It came through official channels, wrapped in diplomatic language and expressions of regret. A tragic accident. Unforeseen magnetic interference. The brave young diplomat who gave her life in pursuit of knowledge. The Galaxy Council extended their deepest sympathies to the people of Earth. In a modest home in the Green Hills of New Zealand, Thomas and Rebecca Blackwood received a different kind of message. Their daughter's face appeared on their communication screen, recorded just hours before her death. She spoke excitedly about the research opportunity, about her dreams of bridging the gap between species, about how much she loved them. The message ended with her smile, bright and full of hope. It was the last time they would see that smile. Thomas was a quiet man who had spent his life teaching literature at a small university. Rebecca worked as a botanical engineer, helping to develop crops that could grow in harsh environments. They were ordinary people who had raised an extraordinary daughter. When the official notification came, explaining that their child had died in an unfortunate accident, something inside Thomas broke and then hardened into something cold and sharp. "They're lying," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Rebecca looked at him through tears, not understanding. Thomas played the message again, pointing at the timestamp. "She sent this 3 hours before the official accident report. But look at the background." Rebecca leaned closer. Behind Sienna, visible through the shuttle window, the crimson nebula was already glowing in the distance. She was already inside the nebula when she recorded this. If the accident happened where they claim, she wouldn't have been able to see it yet. The realization hit Rebecca like a physical blow. They killed her. Thomas stood and walked to his study, Rebecca following. He opened a drawer that he had not touched in 20 years and pulled out an old military identification card. The photo showed a younger Thomas in the uniform of Earth's Deep Space Reconnaissance Division, a branch of the military that officially did not exist. "I need to make a call," he said. Across the Pacific Ocean, in the sprawling underground complex beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Victoria Cross was reviewing reports when her private line chimed. Only 7 people in the entire solar system had access to that line, and all of them knew never to use it unless the situation was dire. "Blackwood," she said when she saw the caller identification. "It's been 20 years. They murdered my daughter, Tori," Thomas said, his voice steady despite the grief. "The council killed Sienna and tried to make it look like an accident." Cross had known Thomas since their days in the reconnaissance division. He was not a man given to exaggeration or paranoia. If he believed his daughter had been murdered, he had proof. "Send me everything you have." Over the next 6 hours, Thomas transmitted every piece of evidence he had gathered. The timestamp discrepancies. The fact that Sienna had never applied for the research trip, it had been assigned to her. The convenient failure of all backup systems simultaneously. And most damning, the final data transmission Sienna had sent in her last moments, a compressed file that contained not just her research, but fragments of intercepted communications between council members discussing the human problem. Admiral Cross brought the evidence to the only authority that mattered. In a sealed chamber beneath the Pacific Ocean, accessible only through a series of quantum-encrypted teleportation gates, sat the 12 members of Earth's Shadow Cabinet. They were the people who made the decisions that kept humanity safe while the rest of the species believed Earth was just another junior member of the galactic community, naive and weak. Director Yuki Tanaka spoke first, her aged face calm despite the rage burning in her eyes. "How long until the fleet is ready?" "The dreadnoughts have been on standby for 2 years, Cross replied. "The carrier groups can launch within 48 hours. The question is whether we reveal everything or just enough to make our point." Dr. Hasan Okoye, the youngest member of the cabinet at 63, pulled up holographic displays showing Earth's true military capabilities. While the Galaxy Council believed humanity had 20 small defense cruisers patrolling the solar system, the truth was far different. Hidden in the asteroid belt, disguised as mining facilities, were 17 dreadnought-class warships, each one larger than anything the Council had ever built. Orbiting in the shadow of Jupiter's moons were 6 fleet carriers, each capable of deploying 500 attack craft. And scattered throughout the Kuiper belt were the ghost ships, unmanned vessels controlled by advanced artificial intelligence that made them faster and deadlier than any piloted craft. For 50 years, while playing the role of grateful newcomers to the galactic stage, humanity had been building a war machine in secret. Every diplomatic insult had been endured with patience. Every condescending remark from council species had been absorbed with humility. Every technological gift from older races had been studied, reverse-engineered, and improved upon. Earth had been preparing for the day when the predators of the galaxy revealed their true nature. That day had come. "We don't reveal everything," said Chancellor Robert Komu, his dark fingers steepled beneath his chin. "We show them just enough to make them understand they made a terrible mistake. We show them that humanity is not prey." The plan came together quickly. Earth would demand a full investigation into Sienna Blackwood's death. When the Council inevitably refused or offered another convenient lie, humanity would withdraw from all galactic treaties. And then they would demonstrate exactly what a species that had fought itself for thousands of years could do when it finally united against an external threat. Meanwhile, on orbital platform Artemis, Ricketh and Olyntha were conducting their own investigation. Something about Sienna's death felt wrong to them. The Kryn used his security clearance to access maintenance records for Transport Echo 9. What he found made his four hearts skip in unison. The shuttle had undergone an unscheduled maintenance check the night before launch, performed by technicians whose credentials did not match any registered personnel. Olyntha used her gaseous form to slip through ventilation systems, reaching areas of the station that were supposedly restricted. In a storage bay near the council chambers, she found components that matched the type of device that would have been needed to sabotage the shuttle. More importantly, she found a partial recording from a security camera that had supposedly been offline. The recording showed two figures in maintenance suits entering the shuttle bay. When they turned, just for a moment, she saw their faces. Council security officers. The two students knew they had uncovered something dangerous. They also knew that if they went through official channels, they would likely suffer the same fate as their friend. So they did something desperate. They broke into the station's main communication array and transmitted everything they had found directly to Earth, using an emergency frequency that Sienna had once mentioned was reserved for diplomatic crises. The transmission was intercepted, of course. Within minutes, Council security forces were moving through the station, searching for the students who had dared to expose the truth. Ricketh and Olyntha ran through corridors they had walked as friends with Sienna, now pursued by those who had murdered her. They made it to an escape pod, Ricketha's four arms working frantically to override the launch protocols while Olyntha used her abilities to jam the door controls. The security forces were cutting through the doors when the pod finally launched, streaking away from the station toward open space. "Where do we go?" Olyntha pulsed in colors that expressed fear and determination. Ricketh set coordinates for Earth. "We go to the only species crazy enough to fight the entire council for justice. We go to the humans." Back on Earth, Admiral Cross watched the escape pod's trajectory and smiled grimly. The students would arrive in 36 hours. The fleet would launch in 48. And the Galaxy Council was about to learn a lesson that humanity had learned millennia ago, that there is nothing more dangerous than someone with nothing left to lose. In his home, Thomas Blackwood stood in his daughter's childhood room, surrounded by her drawings of alien worlds and starships. Rebecca found him there, holding a picture Sienna had drawn when she was 8 years old. It showed humans and aliens holding hands beneath a bright sun, with the words, "Friends Forever," written in crayon. "They took her because she believed in something beautiful," Rebecca said softly. Thomas turned to his wife, and she saw in his eyes the soldier he had once been. "Then we'll make sure her death means something. We'll show the galaxy that humanity protects its dreamers. And we'll teach the Council that there are consequences for extinguishing light." In the darkness of space, hidden among the asteroids, the dreadnoughts began powering up their weapons systems. The age of humanity's patience was ending. The age of reckoning was about to begin. The Galaxy Council convened in emergency session aboard their grand station, Eternal Sanctum, a structure so massive it had its own gravitational field. The council chamber was a monument to their power, with seats arranged in descending tiers that placed the eldest species at the top, looking down upon the younger races below. For 3 million years, decisions made in this room had shaped the fate of thousands of worlds. High Counselor Corvith stood at the central podium, his obsidian form reflecting the light of 1,000 distant stars visible through the chamber's transparent dome. Around him sat representatives of the Council's founding species, beings who had ruled the galaxy since before Earth's sun had finished forming. "The humans have made demands," Corvith announced, his voice carrying the weight of ancient authority. "They claim their student was murdered. They want a full investigation with human observers present. They threaten to withdraw from all treaties if we refuse." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Counselor Thexus, the reptilian whose scales gleamed with oil-slick colors, spoke with undisguised amusement. "Let them withdraw. What will they do? Return to their single planet and sulk? They have no power here. They are children playing at politics." But one voice did not join the laughter. Counselor Zenith, an ancient being whose species had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, raised a crystalline appendage for silence. "I advise caution. We know little of what humans do in their home system. They have been unusually secretive about their industrial capabilities." "Secrecy born of shame," Corvith dismissed. "They hide their weakness. We have scans of their system. 20 small cruisers. Primitive weapons. They are no threat." What the Council did not know was that their scans had been seeing exactly what humanity wanted them to see. Every sensor sweep had been subtly manipulated, every reconnaissance probe had been fed false data, every spy satellite had been shown carefully constructed illusions. For half a century, Earth had been playing the greatest deception in galactic history. Ricketh and Olinthia's escape pod entered Earth's atmosphere 36 hours after fleeing orbital platform Artemis. They were met not by the small defense force the Council believed existed, but by 6 interceptor craft whose technology made their sensors scream with disbelief. The pod was guided to a landing facility hidden beneath the Amazon rainforest, where Admiral Cross herself waited to greet them. "You took a terrible risk coming here," Cross said as the two students emerged, exhausted and terrified. Ricketha's 4 arms trembled as he handed over the data chip containing all their evidence. "Sienna was our friend. She believed in justice. We could not let her murderers hide behind lies." Cross took the chip and placed a hand on the Crin's shoulder. "Your friend's death will not be meaningless. I promise you that." Olinthia shifted through colors expressing confusion and hope. "What will you do? The Council controls the galaxy. They have armies from 1,000 worlds." The Admiral's smile was cold and sharp. "Let me show you what humanity has been building while the Council looked down on us." She led them to an observation deck, and what they saw stole the breath from Ricketha's lungs and made Olinthia flash white with shock. Stretching across the space between Earth and Mars were ships. Not the small cruisers the Council knew about, but vessels of war that dwarfed anything in the galactic fleet. The closest dreadnought was 3 kilometers long, its hull covered in weapon systems that made the Crin's military knowledge recoil in recognition and fear. "How?" Ricketh whispered. "The Council's scans should have detected this." "Humans are very good at hiding things," Cross replied. "We learned that from 14,000 years of fighting each other. We learned patience. We learned deception. And we learned that sometimes the best way to survive is to let your enemies underestimate you until the moment you strike." The final diplomatic message was delivered to the Galaxy Council 48 hours after Sienna's death. It came not from Earth's official ambassador, but from Director Tanaka herself, transmitted on all frequencies so that every species in the galaxy could hear. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "I am Director Yuki Tanaka of Earth's Shadow Cabinet. For 50 years, my species has played the role you expected of us. We have been humble. We have been grateful. We have been weak." This was a lie. The transmission showed footage of Earth's true fleet, ships emerging from hiding places throughout the solar system. The Council members watching felt the first stirrings of something they had not experienced in millennia: fear. "The Galaxy Council murdered Sienna Blackwood," Tanaka continued. "They killed a young woman whose only crime was believing that cooperation was stronger than domination. They killed her because she dared to suggest that your ancient order was built on fear rather than wisdom. We have proof of this crime, and we demand justice." Corvith stood in the council chamber, watching the transmission with growing alarm. His is a bluff. They cannot possibly challenge the combined might of the council species. But Tanaka was not finished. "We do not seek war. We seek accountability. Deliver those responsible for Sienna's murder to stand trial, or humanity will withdraw from all galactic institutions. And we will enforce a quarantine around our space. Any council vessel that enters our territory will be destroyed." The transmission ended. For a moment, the council chamber was silent. Then Thexus laughed, though it sounded forced. "Empty threats. They cannot enforce a quarantine against our fleets." "Test it," came a new voice. Every head turned to see Thomas Blackwood standing in the chamber's entrance. He had traveled to Eternal Sanctum on one of Earth's new diplomatic vessels, arriving before the council could deny him entry. Beside him stood Rebecca, and behind them were parents from across Earth, families who had lost children to the council's casual cruelty over the years. Deaths that had been called accidents. Disappearances that had been explained away. All of them now revealed as murders designed to keep humanity in its place. "You killed my daughter," Thomas said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "You killed her because she was brilliant and kind and believed in a better future. You killed her because she threatened your power. Now you will face the consequences." Corvitha's mandibles clicked in anger. "Remove these humans from our chamber. They have no right to address this council." But before security could move, Admiral Cross's voice came through every speaker in the station. "I would not do that if I were you. Because at this moment, 3 of our dreadnoughts are in position around Eternal Sanctum. Their weapons are locked on your station's critical systems. Make one move against those families, and we will show you what human weapons can do." The council members rushed to their sensors, and what they saw drained the confidence from even the eldest among them. The human ships had appeared as if from nowhere, their stealth technology beyond anything the council possessed. The weapons powering up on those vessels registered energy signatures that should have been impossible. "This is an act of war," Corvith hissed. "No," Thomas replied. "This is justice. You wanted to teach my species our place. Allow us to teach you something instead. You can silence one voice, but when you do, others will rise to take its place." Sienna believed in unity. In cooperation. In a galaxy where species work together instead of ruling over each other. Her death has united humanity in a way nothing else could have. Rebecca stepped forward, her voice strong despite her grief. "My daughter spent her life building bridges. You destroyed her because you feared those bridges would diminish your power. But she taught us something important. She taught us that the old ways are not the only ways. That strength comes not from domination but from standing together." Throughout the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, billions of beings watched the confrontation. Many were species that had suffered under the Council's rule, forced to accept unfavorable treaties, stripped of resources, treated as inferior. They saw the humans standing before the Council without fear, demanding accountability, and something shifted in the collective consciousness of the galaxy. On the Varenthi homeworld, workers who had been preparing for yet another war with the Tide Callers stopped and considered Sienna's proposal, the one she had died believing in. What if cooperation truly was possible? On dozens of other worlds, younger species began asking questions they had been afraid to voice before. Why did the Council make all the decisions? Why was the old order considered sacred? Why couldn't things change? Zenith, the ancient counselor who had urged caution, finally spoke. "Perhaps we have made an error." "Error?" Corvith turned on him. "We eliminated a threat to order. We created a martyr," Zenith replied. "And we revealed our fear. The humans are right. We killed that young woman not because she was wrong, but because we were afraid she was right. afraid that if the galaxy listened to her, our age of dominance would end. The chamber erupted in argument. Some council members demanded immediate military action against Earth. Others urged negotiation. But Thomas Blackwood raised his hand, and somehow, impossibly, the chamber fell silent to hear what this human, this father, had to say. "You can try to destroy us," he said quietly. "You might even succeed. But you cannot destroy what my daughter started. She proved that a human could stand as an equal to any species in the galaxy. She proved that new ideas have value. She proved that kindness and cooperation are not weaknesses. Kill us all, and others will remember. Others will carry on her work. The galaxy is changing, whether you accept it or not." Admiral Cross's voice came through again. "You have 72 hours to deliver those responsible for Sienna Blackwood's murder. If you refuse, Earth will consider itself at war with the Galaxy Council. And I promise you, it will be a war like nothing you have ever experienced. Because we fight not for conquest or resources. We fight for the memory of a young woman who believed the galaxy could be better. And there is nothing more dangerous than people fighting for love." The council session dissolved into chaos. But in that chaos, something remarkable began to happen. Representatives from younger species started approaching the Blackwood family, offering condolences and support. They spoke of their own losses, their own frustrations with the council's rigid control. They spoke of wanting change. Ricketh and Olynthiya stood with Thomas and Rebecca, and the Kryn said something that would be remembered for generations. "Sienna once told me that the strongest force in the universe was not gravity or nuclear fire. She said it was the determination of someone who refused to accept that things had to stay the same. I did not understand then. I do now." Earth's fleet remained on high alert, weapons ready, but not yet firing. They gave the council time to choose. Time to decide whether they would cling to the old ways and face destruction, or whether they would finally allow the galaxy to evolve. And across countless worlds, billions of beings waited to see if one woman's death would spark the revolution she had dreamed of creating through her life. The giant had awakened. And the galaxy would never be the same. Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.